Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Brother Kenneth Deel here to talk about the whole truth, the real truth, and nothing but the truth. Something like that, anyway. But this time we're going to talk about the keys of Solomon, the problem with mixing Christian and Jewish faith with occultism, with black magic, and a demon by any other name is still a demon. That's the first thing I'm going to say. We're going to look back at history first before we go into some other distortions of Solomon's life. I don't understand why people are treating him like he's some sort of like leader. And we're even hearing this in the so-called Catholic occult stuff. And it's not Catholic at all. If you're going to break the first command, you're not even Jewish. You got to keep the commandments. Well, let's look at Solomon first, although David precedes him, and we'll get to him in just a minute. Solomon, I don't know how accurate the stories are. It seems like the numbers change. Did he have 600 wives? Did he have 800 wives? I don't think this is the man that's supposed to have wisdom, but he let this lust, which probably came from his father's sin, David, it got so carried away that he ended up with 800 wives. I mean, can you imagine, if to fulfill your husbandly duty, you're going to have to take a wife in your bedroom once a day, 3 times a day, and that's just over the top. So I question his judgment anyway. Well, as the story goes, without going into quotes and that sort of thing, because you know it, is that he began to first tolerate, because the first problem was he brought in pagan wives. Probably not even an intention of indoctrinating him or whatever. That's probably a word I wouldn't want to use, to bring him into the fold of the Jewish faith. Instead, he just let them be, as they were. And they practiced the rituals together because, many of them, who knows how many? If you have 800, how many of that group is going to be practicing that exact pagan version of their religion or whatever? He went from tolerating it to watching it to participating in it. And you can't do that. You can't have 2 masters. You can't play both sides of the deck. You can't allow those worship stations around the city of David. And eventually they ended up in the temple of the Ark of the Covenant. Solomon was supposed to build a temple. David was not allowed to, because that was one of his punishments for the murder of Uriah and lusting after and adulterizing with Bathsheba. And that in addition to his first son being stillborn. But let's look at the magnitude. We've touched on David a little bit there, the magnitude of Solomon's actions. We had the prophet warn him. And then we see that we had another conquest, another invasion. It was about a Babylonian. See, we're not getting into, he doesn't know his Bible. I'll say, okay, my specialty is, and I'm not a Bible thumper, but I know what I need to know from it without quoting it verbatim. Besides, I'm kind of more of an abstract, random guy. I ask the questions and come up with answers instead of memorizing stuff verbatim and then spewing it out, but I don't necessarily need to even understand it when people do that. It's like accountants, for example, or it's like musicians who can mimic stuff really good. I mean, with their music and play it, imitate, maybe not even sing it because that takes an ear for music. They can totally go through the song and play it like a robot. And it might sound perfect, but it has no emotion, no feeling, and there's no creativity to it where they can make it their own, as they used to say on The Voice or one of those things by Simon Cowell. We're going in the wrong direction totally, aren't we? But let's get back to this thing. So after the Babylonians or Assyrians, who know? I can't remember. I don't have a crib sheet note here stuff. I do stuff from memory, okay? After Solomon died, they got invaded 5 years again after that. And guess what they did? First time you thought they pillaged. The second time they crushed everything. I mean, if people wonder why you don't see there's another thing right here I could say on another video. The seal of Solomon, the king, the Star of David. Some of the archaeologists says that everything was crushed so badly by the young Egyptian pharaoh who came 5 years later and totally annihilated a place as if he was going to level it and put in a new parking lot. That's what you do in New York. That they could not find a lot of symbols and writings and stuff, or even little pieces of pottery that were bigger than this size, inside there, not the hand itself. And but that's another thing about the history of the Star of David and the Solomon's seal. But my point is how much more severe is the sin of breaking the first commandment? Thou shalt not have strange gods before me. that it ended up being so cursed to be Solomon back in that time. And did he beg for forgiveness at some point? You know, someone said something about Solomon, and I said, I'm not going to follow anybody who's in hell. Well, you sure he's in hell? Well, I don't know God's justice, but I'm going to assume as Solomon had committed atrocities, we don't know where he went at that time. I mean, we weren't there. We have more detail about some things in the Bible on the New Testament than we do the Old Testament. It's very vague. Do we ever know Judas went to hell? Well, that's another story in itself. But the fact is that Solomon, when he was acting out of order, apart from the commandments, apart from God's will, and serving two masters, and practicing paganism and Judaism, does not mean that's a person to follow. He is not a good person. He went that far. He let himself be indoctrinated to that. And now we got these, of course, the cultists, and when it even started, where they kind of, we'll just say, bastardized Solomon, the story of Solomon, and then it excludes the fact that, hey, Solomon was not a good guy. You know, he's lucky if he went to heaven at some point, or if he's still in purgatory now, for that matter. But that's something that's totally overlooked because these occultists use it to confuse the masses, probably originally when it was the Jewish times. Remember, the Jews before Abraham were child sacrificers. They did not worship the God of Abraham, more or less, the God of gods, the creator of all things. And then later on, there was, even resurrections of those type of ideologies, cults, and you had with that the Kabbalah, which is its own kind of Jewish mysticism. No, it's Jewish magic. Anyway, it's without a crib sheet, it's getting hard sometimes. So my big point is Keys of Solomon, number one, that's a problem. Now, you look, why is that called a hexagram? The Keys of Solomon, it's got some symbols and graphics and so forth in there. You notice it's Solomon. So it's not Jesus this, Jesus that, anything. That was before Jesus' time anyway. So you're reading stuff, acting like you're going to get some magic ring of power that has what's called a hexagram on it. The hexagram is essentially what they call the Star of David. You still call it the hexagram without a circle being around it. But specifically, it's called Solomon's seal when it has a circle around it. Did Solomon really develop some of these occult symbols and stuff on his own without the distortion of history that was done by future people? The Freemasons and so forth. Ooh, there's that bad word. But the fact is that these are occult things. It's probably a little mix of the Kabbalah and all this other stuff, and it's so funny that people rename something. Like I said at the beginning, a demon by any other name is still a demon. That you can rename stuff. Let me give you an example. There was this, I put it in the first book, Catholic Demonologist Handbook, that it said with these so-called prayers, you'll find that basically they just rewrote it and inserted. It's kind of like when these Christian songs, some people actually took love songs and they replaced baby with Jesus. The way a thing can be modified just by changing one word. And that's what they do with these things. They took old spells, whatever rituals to some degree, and they changed a few things around to make its meaning. Now, if you do that on the other side, you take a Catholic prayer, you can do the same thing. In fact, that's what the Black Mass is. The Black Mass is the complete opposite of what the Catholic Mass is, and it is literally a mirror image of it. And I don't mean like it's a reflection and it's exactly as is. I'm talking about way mirrors are backwards, for you anti-Catholic people out there, So if you want to get educated on that topic, and you can check out another blog or video, or a vlog. Wrote plenty of times about them in the past. Okay, so as we're going on with the Keys of Solomon, this is another kind of like a biblical thing too. Keys of Solomon was favored by Aleister Crowley, Lesser Keys, Greater Keys. Aleister Crowley, they used to call him the most evil man in the world. People have forgotten that. They're following Crowley as though he's some sort of new, like prophet, like, oh, we're learning ancient secrets. Oh, you don't forget, knowledge is not only power, but it's also what the devil lured Eve into or rather out of the Garden of Eden, into sin, into original sin. You're like, oh, Adam and Eve. Well, that's another thing. You want to start debating apologetics, we'll get you in another time on that one. But we're discussing this as it is fact, especially as it all relates to the now, that there is no kind of gray area in this stuff. You either worship God or you don't. You're either for Satan or you're against him. I mean, that absolute does work because Satan and God are absolutes in themselves. It's not like, oh, I'm a Democrat, but I donate to charity all the time and stuff like that. I mean, you can cross the line and be gray in this world all you want. In the afterlife, before life or whatever, in the spirit world, there's only two absolutes, just good and evil. That's it. Now, when people say that demons, they have one and it helps them find his keys and stuff like that, you really think that is going to like dictate the overall goal of the demonic spirit or its real presence? Now, look at people in the world. Look how many people, women got married to husbands that beat the snot out of them, and they were extremely abusive and murderous even. But how did the women get there? They initially were charmed. That's the good part. They were charmed in. Oh, what a gentleman. Oh, he is so, and he's good looking too, because that's not an ugly, being good looking. But when that face starts to scream at you and go evil, I mean, it's the last face in the world you want to go look at. Or whereas originally that face might have been a charmer for a woman. Same thing in the guys too. As it goes the other way around, it goes both ways. We are lured by evil being good, projecting good and beautiful. People in general, that's one of our fallen natures. We do the same thing. It's like a poison, that if the poison tastes good for the rat, it'll eat it because it doesn't know there's a poison in there. They did a test on cats when they were trying to test the effects of alcohol on brain activity and behavior, and they put alcohol in I don't know, it's to some degree, and the cats wouldn't drink it. And then they had trouble finding a liquid solution to mix with the alcohol in order to get them to ingest it. Cats are pretty smart that way, except when it comes to antifreeze. Remember, antifreeze is sweet? I don't think they look at it and go, ooh, yuck, it's green. The green usually means bad when it's liquid, because it's like, how are you going to end up with green stuff unless it's something to do with disgusting pond scum or something. But they actually had to fool the cats by masking it with sweetness. And that's what happens in this world. That's what evil does. So we don't pay attention to any supposed good. So don't start saying, Aleister Crowley, he depends on how you look. That's what they say about communism. Oh, it hasn't been done right yet. But you look at communism everywhere. Another political thing to say on another show or something, perhaps. But I hate talking about politics. It makes me so bitter. People can be that stupid that they're welcoming communism in yet again, and they don't even seem to realize. Oh, my gosh. So how much more can we say about the keys of Solomon is know them by their fruits. Know them by their fruits. Most people don't have any kind of wisdom. How do you think they're starting to invite communism in, wearing not swastikas. They're not wearing swastikas. They're putting hammer sickles on their outfits. Like, oh, the old lovely Soviet Union was so wonderful. People are making the same mistake as they do with politics as they are with this mixture, because they want power, and that's what the communism is about too. Some get power and the others get enslaved. Some are the masters, some are the slaves, and there is no middle. But this is not in any way something you want to mix with exorcism either. You get around the real possessed, and you think it's successful. It'll just be something that's an illusion to keep you captivated and keep you promoting your garbage. The thing I ran into lately was this Catholic occultism. I had not heard it because somebody's creating a new thing, but there's books out there that say Catholic and Orthodox magic. And this is the same idea as Keys of Solomon. They'll change the rituals and spells and put Jesus' name in there, which is kind of funny because demons hate Jesus' name so much, and it provokes demons that are there. Say if you had an occult ritual go on in a house, we'll just say like Satanism. One of the family members are practicing Satanism, and then they move out, and then a Christian Catholic family, Catholic more because, like I said, because of the sacramentals, the crucifixes and all that. A priest comes over to bless the house. All that stuff gives them a hot foot, and they got to jump out and say, ow, even if they don't want to. We rely on that. In fact, one of the four main things they usually say is aversions to the sacred, about testing for demonic, looking for it. And besides that, the extraordinary strength and extraordinary knowledge. There's the word occult, hidden knowledge. We look for that in possessed people. And then you're saying, oh, occult just means hidden knowledge. Well, you know why it's always been used in negative context? Because it's even one of the criteria of the church, when the top 4 that they look for that indicates that there's a demonic spirit presence. So how much more to say about this? This is the problem with not having a crib sheet, but I can just go on and on about this. Well, how about the Ouija board? They got this one called the Angel board. So they put a different sticker on here and they call it a different theme, but suddenly it's not a device. It's actually breaking a commandment. The story where the Witch of Endor, King Saul was feeling in the least very fearful about how he was going to head into this next battle, and Samuel the prophet had already passed. So in his doubt, he went to the Witch of Endor and had him conjure up the ghost of Samuel. Well, see, the other denominations believe that was just a demon. But why would a demon condemn him for doing something? I think God allowed him to come. It didn't really promote that the Witch of Endor was able to conjure him. What it was all about was that it was a part of the event that needed to teach a lesson. And hear directly from Samuel. Obviously, he respected Samuel a great deal, but not enough to follow him. Not so much as we know about when King Saul did not slaughter all of the calf and burn them, and as Samuel had told him, representing God, and it was the prophet. So I suppose this is pretty much all I can say. Probably going to do an hour if I keep going. But God bless everybody, and we'll see you on our regular time slot, which is now going to be Sunday at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, and 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And it'll be on the YouTube, youtube.com/TheRealDeals. Not sure I have a link, but you can check TheRealDeals.com for how to listen and so forth, or searchthesameneckle.org. Okay, God bless everybody. Take care, and we'll see you soon, hopefully.